Welcome, everybody, to another episode. Really excited to be here with Richard Jacroux, a CFO. So this podcast is about, B2B revenue growth, and who better to talk to than somebody who looks at your revenue all day and tells you you're not making enough and spending too much. That sound about right, Richard?
Sure. Yeah. Who better to talk to than a CFO about sales? Pretty much anyone. So, but I'm happy to give the opinion from the cheap seats.
Great. Love it. Well, why don't we just dive in? I always like to start with your background, give people an idea of who they're talking to or who they're listening to right now.
Got it. So I've been a longtime CFO. As you can see, I'm not a young person anymore. Started my career at Ernst Young, helped companies go public there, spent some time in Chicago where I went to Kellogg, got my MBA at Kellogg, did the .com thing, a wonderful time that I'm hoping that AI is another boom like that my children can participate in.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Just an absurd time. And then went into advertising for about 10 years and worked with advertising companies. And now I have a small accounting and fractional CFO firm, and we help clients, and we are all the expertise they need without the expense.
That's great. What kind of clients do you work with?
Yeah, they fall into two major buckets. One is sort of the owner-operated 15-person rate. They haven't grown big enough to need full-time staff. They need a little bit of an accountant. They need a little bit of a CFO, a little bit of HR, a little bit of legal help. And so there's that bucket, and then the other bucket is the fast-growing or dynamic startups, venture-backed or family office, angel-backed, really getting off the ground. And so obviously they don't need a full-time person there, but they need a ton of help. I have a need to be needed. I have a need for me to make a difference. Right? I need for my work to make a difference, and these are the sorts of organizations that need me and where I can help.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think you have quite a background in fundraising as well in the startup scene, right?
Yeah, so I probably helped raise, a couple $100 million of equity, and must be moving toward $40 million, maybe even $50 million of debt for organizations, everything from seed rounds to A to B to C to public offerings. So if you include the public offerings, probably more than $200 million.
Nice. That's a boatload of cash, I think is the technical term. So let's dive in a little bit into, how do you see your role at a company or at a client? I joked at the beginning that, a lot of people see the CFO as the person that tells them no. You can't have your budget, but I imagine there's a lot more nuance to it than that. So tell me a little bit about what it looks like as a CFO.
Yeah. So the two things. Fundamentally, I help build a foundation from which great work can grow. So what does the organization need foundationally that allows people, that gives people the room in order to be creative and help the organization move forward? That's my fundamental role. That should be the fundamental role of every CFO who, from a financial perspective, is helping to build that foundation.
Yeah.
In that context, I find that people need me for one of three reasons. Richard, I'm doing too much admin stuff, or there's this admin burden, this overhead is just too heavy. Can you take it off my hands so I can focus on growing my business? That's bucket number one. This is, everything from bookkeeping, payroll, closing the books, account reconciliations, tax returns, financials, budgets you mentioned, right? Budgets and forecasts, all that kind of stuff. That's right. Bucket number one. Bucket number two is one of two things. Richard, can I afford? Or Richard, I messed something up. So what does that mean? Richard, can we really afford the headcount increases? How much can I afford for raises? How much, what can we do with this partner? What can I do about it? The flip side of that is, oh dear God, Richard, my burn is too high. I need to do something about margins. I need to cut my costs. So that's kind of bucket two. That's my performance improvement bucket. And then bucket number 3 is do big things. Richard, I need to do an acquisition. Richard, I need to raise money. Richard, I need to raise debt. Richard, I need to go international. Richard, I need to do a restructuring. So you go from kind of your standard work, which is your everyday stuff, to strategic growth, right? So that was my strategic growth bucket, is bucket number 3. I answer your question?
Yeah. No, that's great. That gives, I think, a lot of context for the conversation. So let's talking about strategic growth a little bit. Let's dive into that bucket and what does that look like?
Yeah. So you mean in terms of fundraising?
Yeah.
So a couple things I've found for fundraising. Where do you want to start? You want to start like at the seed level, somewhere in that ABC level, or later stages?
Let's start with seed and just
Okay.
move on from there.
Yeah. So you're a entrepreneur starting out. You've got a great idea, and it's time for you to start structuring your thoughts. I prefer a framework where you talk about 5 things. What's my product? Who's my customer? How am I going to reach them? How am I going to make money? And who's the team? It's really kind of that simple. If you can articulate those 5 things, that's really all you need to articulate. The most important of the 5 is not what is your product or service. That's the one entrepreneurs always want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
The most important is who's your customer. It's like getting your investor, your potential investor, into the mindset of your customer.
Right.
I've had people pitch me ideas like where it's a game for a 13-year-old girl. I am clearly not that. And so unless you can put me in that mindset and make me think about what they think about and how they make decisions and how what they're looking for, what their problems might be that this application solves, unless you can put me in that mindset, like I won't get it, or at least there's the chance I won't get it.
Right? See, Richard, I knew that you were secretly a marketer at heart, because you led in with you have to know your customer, and that's the foundation of marketing too.
I can't tell you how many times I run across people that speak in demographics, and that's not where decisions get made, right? I mean, yes, you can kind of compartmentalize some of those decision makers by saying, they're middle-aged white guys that, live in a certain place, that have a certain income, that whatever. But, decisions, in my humble opinion, get made here, not here, right? They get made here, and then you prove it later to yourself here, which is why I being a CFO, I want to be a database decision maker. I want the organization to use more data in the decision and kind of help balance the two. But I fully understand that's not where decisions get made. So if you can tell me about the psychographics of your customer, your target market, then I can understand their problems better, and I can understand whether your solution makes sense. Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
So moving up into Series A, I imagine numbers start to matter a little bit more.
Yeah. So when you're a seed series, you are really selling the potential of the organization. You've got a dream, and you're asking people, customers, investors, and potential employees, you're asking them to join you on your crusade. So it's about talking about your crusade, right?
Mm-hmm.
Later on, you start to have to prove that crusade true, right? So once you have that, seed money should help you, prove out your business, get to an MVP, a minimum viable product, find that first target, and then you're probably going to have to pivot, right?
Right.
It's never perfect the first time out. And so you're going to have to, pivot on your pricing. You're going to have to pivot to find a big enough target market. You'll have to make tweaks to your product to get a better product market fit. You may not even have that yet. So, but these are your proof points, right? These are going to be the points at which you're creating additional value. A lot of people are going to talk about revenue traction. I think it's Series A. Yes, they'd like to see some revenue traction. But more importantly, it's about how am I starting to articulate my product market fit and prove that it's true? Give that data, not that data, that you really do have product market fit, and you're not just fooling yourself. And it doesn't have to be 100% yet, and that you've found a target that needs that MVP and is willing to exchange resources for it, right?
Yep.
Willing to give you enough money for you to make money at this, right? You need to survive.
Right.
And so your Series A is about showing those proof points, those milestones, in order to get a step up in value and get people excited about your next stage. The next stage then, Series B, that money is really about starting to scale and scale growth.
Right.
And then Series C might be to do something interesting, like go international, right? If you think about your product market matrix, right?
Yep.
Now it's about like, hey, I need money to get into that upper right-hand quarter of new products or new markets.
Yeah,
Make
no,
sense?
that makes total sense. And I think, what the question on a lot of people's minds is, okay, that's great and all, but what's the fundraising market look like right now?
Yeah.
Because it looks choppy.
Yeah. So it is choppy. Right now, coming off of the easy money of late 2020, 2021, and that sort of, I won't say drying up. There's still plenty of money out there, but the easy valuations,
Right.
the high valuations, A through C, those valuations have all come down. A lot of people are doing convertible notes, and so valuations have come down. Timeline has gotten longer. Like if you need money in 3 months, oh dear God, like it's going to be 6 months to do a raise now. It's going to be a lot of dancing. It's going to be a lot of negotiation. And as long as you have a supportive cap table, meaning your current investors are supportive,
Right.
you've got a little bit of room to argue. But if you need to bring someone new to the table, that's going to be tough. So this is all about relationships. Hopefully you've worked, starting in your seed round, you really start to need to think about who are going to be the big investors for my A and B rounds, and are they going to have fun money? And so, it's the opposite of what our parents told us: never loan money to friends. VCs only loan money to people they know. Right? You only invest in people they know.
Right.
In a lot of times, especially if it's your first round, if it's your first venture, the VCs are going to want to watch you for a while, want to watch you as milestones, and want to, right? It's easy to paint a picture in your A that everything's been going great, but if they saw you when you were a seed and they saw the 3 pivots you had to make, and the misses on your MVP, and trying to find a target market a couple of times, if they see that, that's not necessarily the kiss of death. They know, right? If they've only seen you here and they haven't watched the journey, then they're like, I'm not hearing the whole story, right? Anytime you increase the distrust, if people don't trust you, they don't write you checks.
Right.
Guaranteed. That's the way it is. So them watching you for a while and seeing how you work through those things, seeing how your mind works, seeing how that traction is coming together.
Yep.
Seeing how those milestones are coming together, right? There's betting on the horse and there's betting on the rider. So the business is the horse, and you've got the milestones along the way, and they want to see it, they want to see it kind of working, but they also want to watch the rider and see, are you hitting the horse with the stick too hard, or whatever the metaphor is. Right? I mean, like when the water gets shallow, the fish get mean. That's always, the water's going to get shallow on your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah.
At least more than one, probably. And sometimes it's even just perceived shallowness. And how you make your way through that, people are going to be very interested in watching to understand how you're going to honor and respect and work with their money, right? They don't want to come in and step in your shoes and run your business. They want you to do that. So what's my point? My point is that make those relationships as early as possible so they can watch you on that journey.
Right.
You ask for advice, you'll get money. Ask for money, you'll get advice. Right. So asking for advice early. Let them watch you. Don't walk in the room expecting to close money on the first date. Right. No one gets married on the first date. So if you kind of follow some of these things and understand the way people make decisions, you're proving your proof points, you can still raise money even in a tight environment like today.
Right.
On the C side, oddly enough, because the funds are not writing a lot of checks to in later stage companies, and they're delaying that. They're trying to work those deals better. They are actually writing more checks at the seed level, and the valuations have actually come up.
Oh, interesting.
The president of Silicon Valley Bank literally yesterday, and the new one, right? He was in town, and he was saying the same thing. They just did a bunch of research and found ABC rounds are down, seed rounds are actually up. So this might be a great time to launch something if you get your act together and if you're able to articulate clearly those 5 sort of things.
Yep. No, there's always opportunities when things get tough. That's where the opportunities are for the early stuff.
If I can add one context to those 5 things, because that might feel a little dry and rote, is, you have to think about the story arc for those 5 things. And it's important to make sure that you're touching on 3 things, what I call the pillars for the 5 sacred elements in your business plan. And those pillars are, why will anyone care? First and foremost, this is why the customer is so important. Why will anyone care? And how do I get from need to want, right? Yes, they might need your product category. How do they get them to want your brand? That's bucket number 1 or pillar number 1. Pillar number 2 is why will you win, right? What's your competitive advantage? Why will you win? And don't spend a ton of time talking about all the competition, because that just frightens people. But talk about the other partners you can work with, and how you're going to be better than them. And then bucket number 3 is why now? I can't tell you how many great ideas were either a little early and spent too much money waiting for the market to arrive, or were too late and just couldn't catch up.
Yep. No, those are great. And to your point of building the relationships early, it's all the best founders out there. They know that they're always fundraising. Even when you're not, you're always fundraising, because you have to be prepared for the next time you need money. And the more you can fundraise when you don't need money, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah, there were a couple of cases in that kind of 2020, 2021 timeframe where, people were coming to clients looking to make investments. And I had clients say things like, well, I don't want to take too much dilution, or I don't want to take too much this or that. And, if you've got literally $1.3 million of revenue and someone is, and you've got backlog, don't get me wrong, there's clearly a high growth curve, but someone's willing to value you at $75 million, like, take it all, take everything you can get.
Yes.
Because right now, that valuation is in half. And so whatever you're raising now, you could have raised 18 months early, just sat on and felt comfortable, focus on your business rather than focus on the fundraising. And you still wouldn't have had the dilution because it was a super high valuation. Anyway, so you're right. People are kicking themselves right now because they weren't taking everything they could when they could.
Yep.
You're 100% right.
So transitioning a little bit here, over the years, I've worked with a lot of companies that are either they just finished, raising a fund or fundraising and saying, okay, now we have to do something with this money, or businesses who are more well-established and their revenue growth is kind of hitting a plateau and they're thinking, all right, what's my next big swing? How do you approach what that investment should look like? You mentioned early on, establishing, how much can I afford? How much of a bet can I put into this? How aggressive can I be? Like, how do you even start breaking down that problem?
Yeah, that's a tough one because you're talking about the future, and the future is guaranteed to no one, right? So
exactly.
you are going to have to. It's never going to be a perfect decision. It's never going to be 100% data. It's going to be some like, what do we think? And so, frankly, getting more. This is why I highly recommend advisory boards, even if you're an organization that did. Get yourself a board of directors in a way, not for fiduciary reasons. While depending on your organization, that might make sense, but bring in some advisors that can just help you think through stuff and spark ideas, right?
Yep.
Serendipity happens, but serendipity happens to people moving around in time and space, because serendipity, they're the sparks of collisions that happen in the marketplace, right? Anyway, so okay, so we're talking about the future, and hey, Richard, I've kind of hit a plateau on my growth, and so I'm looking at one of probably 4 options. It usually boils down to, as you can tell in my talk, I bucketize things. It's the way I understand.
I love it. I think that's great.
So I usually think in 4 different categories when we start talking about, hey, Richard, I hit a growth plateau. What do you think? And plateau number 1, especially in the kind of the size companies that I'm frequently dealing with, is it's a problem of getting past founder-led sales. So I'm a founder. I'm great at selling, but no one can sell like me. And that can be a tough one, because that can often be more about helping the entrepreneur take off a couple of hats, right? They love wrapping their arms around a business, and they have a choice at that point. Do you want this to be a great lifestyle company? You're making $600,000 a year. It's a wonderful business, right? Or do you really want to grow this thing and leave some major assets to your kids?
Right.
I mean, like I can get you an 8 times multiple on that $600,000, but let's get more.
Right.
So that's the biggest one. In that case, there's some folks that I work with, like Diane Branson, who's brilliant at helping people kind of break themselves open, frankly, which I'd be happy to make an introduction to you. She's just, frankly, just brilliant at helping individuals find their own ability. It's just outstanding.
That's amazing.
Yeah, because I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about people that they want to get beyond being able to wrap their arms around a business, but they just can't.
You have to actually let go for that to happen.
Yeah, it's scary, right? It's scary. So that's bucket number 1, and that's usually where we start, depending on the client size and depending on how long they've been at that plateau and the things they've tried.
Right.
The 3 ones that we can get interesting in and requires budget are new products, new markets, and something inorganic, right? So let's mergers and acquisitions.
Right.
Sometimes people are constrained by the area that they serve, or there's some ancillary markets nearby, some target markets sitting right near the periphery that we can start to make adjustments for. And those can be product adjustments, those can be market adjustments. This is where a lot of times people are saying, I just realized there's more space, there's more customer interest, there's more people using these technologies in Europe rather than in the US, right? Or I've not hit the Southeast yet. I'd love to go, there. How do I start doing that? So doing a market expansion is one thing. And so what I really like to do is, if it feels right, like, it feels right to go to Europe, then it's right. And oftentimes in people's instincts, don't discount people's instincts. It's sounds right? So then it's like, okay, let's do some research. If we have the time to do it, let's do some research on who, what, when, where, why, how much, right? Just where are these people? What language barriers are we going to face? And given the fact that I have the administrative background of going to Europe, I can tell you how much it's going to cost, and which countries are easier to hire in and fire in, and what we need to do to open a bank, and how we can get started. And in some countries, you literally have to be on the ground to open the business. Some countries, you don't have to. So, and are easier to work with. So I can help you through the administrative stuff, but let's really start to understand that market and what needs to change in the product to hit that market, right? Language, support issues, et cetera, et cetera. So once you've got kind of the basis of that, you can start making a plan.
Right. That
plan, a budget, people often ask, Richard, what's the budget? And I'm like, what's the plan? And they're like, well, what's the budget? And I'm like, so, and the reason we play this little game is a budget is merely a financial representation of a plan. If you don't have a plan, then I can't make you a budget. I can start with what you played last year, right? And that's usually where the conversation devolves to, is like, oh, well, Richard, I need a starting point for my plan. Got it. Okay. Now I can tell you kind of what you can afford so you don't get over your ski tips in terms of how much money is available for this level of investment.
Right.
But if you can put together your milestones from an intellectual place, if you can put together timelines for hitting those milestones from an intellectual place, all based on kind of your gut instinct of where you're going to take this business, I can start to model that and help you understand where your go, no-go points.
Yep. Right.
And how much investment is going to take to get to those go, no go points.
Yeah.
So that's true for product changes, essentially R&D, and the product changes. That's true for market.
Yeah. I think a lot of what you're saying right now is, just to stick on that a little bit, is the collaborative nature of this, because I think a lot of people want to oversimplify, and they want it to be like, here's the framework and here you just plug in the variables and you're good to go. And if business were that easy, everybody would do it.
Yep. Exactly right. There's a reason why this is hard.
Yep.
Right. And yeah, we need your business acumen and instinct, and that instinct comes from experience, right? I often believe in the slow hunch, which is, people believe that that they have aha moments, and while it feels like an aha moment, it probably isn't. It's probably the final synthesis of stewing for a long time to come to a point.
Yep.
That's an aha moment.
Yep.
But actually, you were stewing on it for a long time. So
Yeah.
when I listen to people's instinctual input, I listen because there's probably expertise and experience behind it.
Right.
But then I want to spend some time unpacking what that expertise and experience is in order to understand its truth, right?
Yep.
So that's how I get there. And if you have people on your advisory team to help you unpack that stuff, or bring you their instinct, help their expertise and experience that got them to their instinct, then I think you've got the makings of a good plan. And if you have a makings of a good plan, then you can represent it financially and understand whether you can afford it or not.
Right.
Or how you finance it if you can't afford to do it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because there's always options. Yeah, I want to shift gears just a little bit, because there's a lot of listeners that, they get mad at me if I don't bring up AI at every possible option. So I'm curious if, if you're using AI day to day, if you're working with companies that, are using it, just what are you seeing related to that?
Yeah. So a couple of things. For my own purposes, I use ChatGPT or Bard to do research, to write things. It's a great way to get started. It is a free staff person.
Yeah.
And I think that's true right now for a lot of places. On the accounting side, I can't tell you how many systems that are out there, whether they be, cable purchasing systems, true accounting systems, sales and customer matching systems, et cetera. They're all using some form of machine learning on the back end to make those rote processes easier. Because frankly, in the end, if you can articulate your decision-making process, right, in any sort of tree-like function, easy for machine learning, right? I mean, easy, right? And you can teach it the nuances to get those edge cases in working well.
Right.
So I'm working with a couple of machine learning / AI companies right now. One is really at the seed range. They have their first customers. They have their first MVP. So I'm calling it Seed Plus.
Is that an official designation?
Yeah, it's the first time they're looking for professional money. They were bootstrapped to get to this, and they have some money from like family and friends.
Nice.
But this idea is bigger than the $400,000 or so that they've raised.
Right.
So that's why I call it Seed Plus.
That's great.
Anytime you're going beyond the bank of mama, papa, sister, it becomes real. Anyway, they where I think it's going to be hard for some folks in the AI world is a lot of people are essentially putting, well, here's my impression. So this is coming from the cheap seats. Is that people are putting service wrappers around existing LLMs. So,
right.
And that's going to be tough to fund. It might end up being a good service business, but service businesses are always tough to fund because, frankly, if it's a lot of human capital involved in the delivery of your product or service, that means your assets walk out at 6 p.m. every day, and that means that's a tough thing for investors to kind of get behind. They love product companies.
Yep.
So your job as an AI company is to productize what you do as much as possible. And and use, write your own algorithms that use your own data sets that may call upon other LLMs for additional input and understanding.
Yep.
But make sure that you've got something that truly is yours, and maybe the customer's data. So it's their data, but truly something, the algorithms, the product that's consuming this information is truly yours. If you can do that, then you truly have a product, and that can get financed. Beyond, and I think this is going to be, it's tough. My son is just entering college, and I can't imagine a entry-level job that's not replaceable. Because anything, if you think about the staff people that you work with, if you need to teach them the ropes, as it were,
right,
that means you can teach a system. Period. It just period. It can be done. I hear a lot of people talk about, oh well, these systems will never. Dot. I'm 100% believer that's not true. Oh well, Richard, they won't have the insights that a human can give. It's like, you know what? If you can consume it, and if you can process it, these systems are just babies. Right?
Yeah,
they're about 3 years old now. They're just babies. Wait until they're teenagers and start giving you back talk.
Yeah, that's a scary thought. A teenager tantrum of AI. Oh God.
And then just wait until they're faster thinking at you, right? I mean, I've found for even myself that my ability to process information is just not keeping up. I love having some right-hand person, in this case, not a human, that can me process that. So that'll be stage one, but stage two is it's going to replace me, and I'm going to have to figure out how to play the guitar or something. Right? So it's easy. It's easy at my level, right? And relationships still matter, right? There's a reason why people don't buy all their furniture at IKEA, right? That's robot made. There's a reason why people like things artisanally made, and that'll always be true. But just like robotics theoretically can replace anything that's man-made, AI can replace anything that's man-thought.
Right.
So that's just my humble opinion. And did I answer anywhere in there?
No, that was great. That's some strong thoughts on AI, and I agree with a lot of it. So I think
if I can add one thing, and I have the privilege of teaching at the University of Washington. They have me take on a class. New tech and future markets is the class they have me teach about every other quarter or so. They bring in, so there's 20 to 40 students whose minds I'm, obliterating. And so, Richard, I'm in HR. Is AI going to replace my job? And, I have to be frank with them and say, starting out in HR is unfortunately a perfect one, where because it's the whole administrative and the side of the business where it's about compliance. That's rule-based decision-making, right? That's running payroll. Right. But so that's gonna be tough. But there still is obviously in HR going to be a whole human aspect of dealing with humans that can be started. Probably can be done. Frankly, can be done in AI as it matures. But people aren't going to want to.
Right.
Right? I mean, imagine having the opportunity to, instead of seeing a counselor of some sort, to be able to see a digital counselor of some sort. The probability is you're going to want to talk to another human because there's a connection there. That's just not right. So will HR change dramatically? Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. Because of the administrative side and the compliance side. Will it completely eliminate the need for humans to interact? No.
Right. Yep.
But that's the difference.
Yep. Amen. I talk to people too about, it's AI is going to be applied to anything, even in the short term, where it's either going to rapidly increase revenue or rapidly decrease costs. And, HR, that's a cost center, right? And is there an application of AI in there that will save a significant chunk of money? And the answer is yes. It's absolutely there.
100%.
So to wrap this up a little bit, this has been a really great conversation. I feel like we could keep talking about a lot of stuff for a long time. But I like to close out with any sort of a recommendation that you have, whether it's a podcast or a book or a newsletter or a new little toy that you bought. Anything that you want to recommend?
Boy, I probably should think of something for a new little toy. But as you can see, I'm sitting here in my library. I guess I will recommend a book. And by a book, I mean pretty much anything by Malcolm Gladwell.
That's a great one.
Yeah. And even if you're not a book person or you find it hard to find the time to read, look up videos by Malcolm Gladwell too. He's a great storyteller. He's a great speaker. So it's frankly fabulous. But especially his book Outliers, or David Brooks on the other side of the fence. But these books, especially like Outliers, it helps you understand the way people think and make decisions. And frankly, being a database guy, being a CFO type, I understand fully. And you've clearly heard me say that I understand that not all decisions are made intellectually. Not all decisions are data-based. And in fact, I believe that the opposite is true. Most decisions are not data-based. We use data later to prove ourselves right? Right.
Yes.
Understanding how it's why people, I can't tell you how many times I talk to students and I'm like, go do some research, and they feel like going on the internet and finding someone that agrees with them is research, right? not that, right? And you and I could probably right now come up with any absurd thought and go on the internet and find proof that's true. So even when they try to be database decision makers, it's hard. It's hard in the current environment, right? So understanding how people make decisions, and not to manipulate them, but to understand what matters and help you navigate that. Right? This is where my pillars come from. Why now? Why will you win? And why will people care? The most important one. So a book like Outliers to help you understand the way people think, the way David Brooks approaches decision making and thought processes is a great way to kind of start to wrap your head around how people, unlike yourself, start to think about the decision-making process and how to get them to yes.
Yeah, I agree. I've read Outliers. I love it. Highly recommend it. And I definitely second your opinion of I could listen to Malcolm Gladwell for hours. He's just he's so good. I haven't read David Brooks yet, but it's on my list now, so I'll be going and checking that out for sure. Well, Richard, thank you so much. Do you have any closing thoughts you want to share?
No. If you ever have a question, let me know. Happy to answer. Happy to give you my opinion.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Richard. It's been amazing, and I am very, very grateful. So
yeah, no problem at all. This was fun. I really appreciate your time.